Bisa Butler. Bisa is a nickname, and then Butler is my married name.
That's
So if I was doing this back in, gosh, when I was a freshman in 1991, I would have said, my name is Melissa Yamba, and I am a fine arts major from New Jersey.
okay. So, could you tell me a little bit about how you got interested in fine arts and how you kind of carried that over into wanting to pursue it in college?
My father, he was a college president for 39 years in New Jersey, a school called Essex County College in Newark, New Jersey. And he wanted to make sure that I could take care of myself and that I would have a steady paycheck. So everybody knew that I loved art. They always supported that. Like every Christmas, I always got like a big box of Prismacolor pencils, and art students know like Prismacolor was like the top at the time. And um, so he convinced me to go to Howard as an architecture student because that way I could have what was considered like a more steady income. My last project, when I knew it was over for me in architecture, we had like a big, we had to design some kind of building. I don't remember what it was. And that was supposed to be like the culmination of the semester. And it must have been around April because it wasn't all the way at the end, but close to it. And everybody else had a whiteboard, and then they would draw with either black fine point pens or fine pencils. And I decided I wanted to use a blackboard and do white pencil on top and use like white chalk. So I wanted to have this reverse idea and that mine was going to stand out. And I remember that cost me so bad. I mean, the building I had designed was beautiful, and we got like a numerical code for the grade. But I remember that one of the professors who were judging the artwork said, "This one with the black on white, it just looks dirty, and I don't like it." And I remember that they gave me a B. And I was always like a really high achieving student. So a B was like just an absolute outrage to me, especially because of the time and effort that I put into it. The B came not because my design wasn't sound or my design wasn't creative, but they objected to the difference that mine was the only one with black on white. And that was it for me. I had already been struggling. I knew it wasn't for me. And I had English class in Douglas Hall, like, I guess it must have been the very next class. And my professor, her name was Dr. Shuttlesworth, an African-American woman. She was really down to earth, and she noticed that I was off. And she pulled me aside after class and was like, "What's wrong?" And I told her, I had like tears in my eyes, and I told her how disappointed I was and how much I hated architecture. And she told me to just hold on 1 minute. She went and locked her office, got her bag, and she like took my hand and walked me across campus up into the School of Fine Arts, introducing me to the dean right there, and was like, "This young lady wants to be in fine arts."
Wow, that's a pretty powerful story. I know that you, in addition to deciding your major, it took you a while to kind of decide what medium you wanted to go through, and that you graduated as a painting major. What made that decision, and then how did you transition from that into getting into quilts and stuff?
What I love about Howard is your professors actually see you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, your classes are not 500 people in there. My daughter did go to the School of B. She graduated in 2017. So I'm assuming a lot of her classes were bigger, but the fine arts classes were small. I don't think I had a class that had more than 20 people in it. So you couldn't hide if you were struggling or if you were slacking off. And my paintings, they just didn't have it. My professor didn't recognize that I was struggling, but I reached out to him, and his name was Al Smith. And he eventually became the Dean of Fine Arts. And I think he retired about 4 years ago. Because I went to one homecoming, and that was like his last homecoming. He told me he was retiring. But Al Smith told me, "I'm going to come to your painting space, to your studio, and I'm going to look at what you're doing. And I'm going to see if I can offer help." And Al Smith looked at me and all my friends and all that was going on. And he was like, why are you not infusing yourself into your artwork? You know, you're doing this standard painting that looks like it came out of a book, but you have all this funky hip hop going on in the house. You've got all your roommates, they're all like beautiful black girls. And then we had two guys who lived in the basement apartment. And my artwork didn't reflect that. So he said, look at the artwork of Romare Bearden, who was a collage artist. Romare Bearden was a lot, but he did collage, and he put fabric and newspaper and text in his artwork on his paintings. So I started doing that. I cut up pieces of African fabric, which I love, and I have been wearing, and I started gluing those onto the canvas. And then I went to the fabric store and I got lace and I got velvet, because those were the types of fabrics I was used to from my mother and my grandmother, like those high priced fashion fabrics. I started gluing those onto my canvas. And so I graduated. It was a little difficult on graduation right before, because all of that fabric on the canvas in the School of Fine Arts, at the end, at that time, you had to present a body of work. And that could be like 10 to 15 pieces. That's like your thesis. This is to show this is what I've been doing all this time in my last semester. And this body of work should be cohesive, and you should be able to speak about your work. You don't have to write like a dissertation, but you do have to be able to write and speak intelligently about what you're doing. And there was a big like problem in my final evaluation or my final critique, because half of the faculty was like, she's supposed to be graduating with painting, and we see like at least 70% fabric. So this is not paint. So we don't feel like she should graduate. And then Al Smith, he wasn't the dean at the time, he was just a professor, so they were all at the same level. He said, and I think there were at least 2 or 3 who stood with him and were like, she is painting, she's painting with fabric, and she's doing something different. I was fully committed. When I started putting fabric on my work, I knew that something special was happening and that I had finally hit on some way to express my true self in my artwork. So if they were going to reject that, I'm not going to go back and create a bunch of flat paintings again. And I'm really glad that they did see the light, I guess. I wish I could be a fly on the wall and hear what was said during that discussion.
And I want to kind of touch on that some more for students who are at Howard now or just anywhere. How do you find that point as an artist when you know that your work has gone beyond technicalities and it starts to enter the realm of its own creation? And what would you say to artists on how to like find that area themselves, and then also how to be bold enough and brave enough to step out and embrace it?
Yeah. I mean, hopefully it helps if you have some sort of mentor who can give you the good advice. Like Al Smith really he was I don't know if he wasn't the head of the painting department, but he did paint the upper level painting courses. Like Howard, you have so many people who could be possible mentors. And I feel like it's important to have that person who can advocate for you and can say like, I know you. I'm looking at the way you dress. You should look at Romare Bearden. Or somebody who looks at you and says like, I see the books that you're reading or the music that you're listening to, and it's in total contrast to like what you say is you, but what you really like to do is something totally different. And I feel that it's important to take advantage of that. You know, that's why we have those high tuitions, because you have these successful Black people who are all around you.
Right. And I'm hearing in what you're saying that in addition to finding who you are, it's also a lot about what you observe. And you went viral for the video where you discussed African Cobra and all that they did to show you the color. And I noticed that you have such vibrant color in your work, similar to Romeo Bearden's. And I just wanted to ask you how you sort of found color and how to use it in an unfamiliar way, and bring
Mm-hmm.
your uniqueness in your work.
So Afrocobra said we want African influenced colors. And not just that though, they wanted it to be uniquely African American. So we don't want just Africa, because we are American. We have been here for over 200 years. Our ancestors built this country and were influenced by this country. So they called their palette the Kool-Aid color palette. And we all know Kool-Aid is super vibrant, super inky. Kool-Aid is also accessible for everybody. It's really cheap. And Afrocova, that was another one of their tenets, that art should be for the people. As an ordinary Black person, they believe that every Black person who looks at a piece of Black art should feel affirmed by looking at it. They should feel seen. They should feel good about themselves. They should see people in the art that have features like we have: full lips, African nose, dark skin, kinky hair, and all the shades of Blackness, from light, super light, to all the way very dark. And your job as an artist is to help your people. And I still feel like I operate on that today. My colors are still the Afrocobra bright colors. I'm still using those Kool-Aid brights, and I use a lot of African fabric in my artwork itself. And my father's from Ghana, so I have both. I have my mother's side from New Orleans and my father's side from Ghana, and that is directly an African American person. It's both. And I'm trying to put both of those cultures into my work. And I think about that too, though, that when my people look at my work, I don't ever want them to feel ashamed or bad or feel like sad about their heritage. I want them to feel good and be able to look at my work and feel like I know that fabric. I know a person who kind of looks like that, and this is for me.
Right. And in addition to discussing how important it is for art to be a reflection of us, I also kind of wanted to discuss art as a catalyst for change, and some of your work or pieces that you feel like have truly helped push that, or that you have used that as a motivation for your work. If you could touch on some.
I feel like all of us have to do whatever we can to try to help our people in any way that we can. And if the thing I can do is make artwork and then call attention to the fact that Breonna Taylor was brutally murdered and that this is wrong and that this has to change, then that's what I'm going to do. We have a responsibility to look out for ourselves and take care of ourselves like we see other races doing.
I agree. And one of the projects that I was looking at that you did most recently that I feel like was really inspiring was your work with Shea Moisture. And so I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that and how much that project meant to you.
They told me that they were going to work with 6 different artists, and they would like to work with me, all Black women. And it was going to be an animation that, of course, sold their products and highlighted the beauty of African American hair. And that the whole campaign is the campaign is to highlight the beauty of African American hair, but a big part of the products that they're selling went into what they call the Shea Moisture Fund, which was a fellowship program where they gave grants.
I just want to say I appreciate your work because it definitely spoke to me. Even though I'm not an artist, I was able to look at your page and feel the emotions emitted from everything that you have there. So those are all the questions that I have.